Hi friends, it's Belinda here for Be Making Joy. Welcome to What Brings Me Joy, mostly knitting. And this is a different type of episode, different type of video. We're going to do a travel vlog. We're off to Hawaii and we're starting with picking my yarns for my travel knitting. I've decided I'm going to do a sweater from start to finish, and each day of the trip I'm going to change what color of yarn I'm using. So let me get this camera set up a little better and we'll go through the yarns that we've got. So these yarns are all from River City Yarns in Edmonton, a store that doesn't exist anymore. It's hand dyed by Handmade Fibers in Nova Scotia. And it was dyed specifically for the store River City Yarn. So these colors will not be available anymore. Now, my vacation is for 8 days. 1 full day of travel to get there. We're going to Hawaii, Kauai to be precise, the Garden Island. So a full day of travel there and a full day of travel back. The total trip will be 8 days of knitting. Not full-on knitting every day. Of course, we'll be touring around and I will take you with me and show you bits and pieces of where I go. And I will keep you up to date with the progress on this project. So I need 8 colors. And I'm thinking of doing either the Vernunculus or the Love Note. Haven't decided yet, so stay tuned. This is a light weight yarn. So 8 colors of it should be good for a Vernunculus or a Love Note. Okay, so let's get started and figure this out. What do we want? There's only one variegated skein here. Unicorn, Blue Moon, when the store did a color of the month. It seems to go quite nicely with both of these bundles. These bundles were I guess Advent bundles. I think I got them in December for a special promotion. I'm thinking this bundle immediately is an out. I think we'll pick 8 yarn from these bundles. So the bundles each have a full skein and 4 minis. Well, 120 gram full skein and 60 gram minis. Oh dear, my phone is ringing. Sorry about that interruption, but bonus for you, I've gone ahead and taken the yarns out of their packaging so you don't have to listen to the crinkling. So, let's see. I love this one. It really is the colors that I go for, the purples and blues. And it matches this one nicely. And this one. I think that's the same pink in there. But those 3 would look nice together, wouldn't they? I feel like I should save those to go together as just one project and work with these smaller skeins for the current project. Oh, but these 2 are the same color. Could I go start with this one and end with this one? I feel like this blue is an odd man out. Do you think? Let's bring back that other bag and see if we're kicking that one out. We're kicking the full skein out. Ooh, I could add that to the mix too for that. Ooh, thoughts for the future. Yeah, I'm definitely kicking this one out too. It's too bright, too out of sync. And I'm not going to duplicate a color. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Let's just play around and rearrange these and see what we come up with for a sequence. I'm thinking this pink one is off the charts too for that. Of course the purple's staying in because that's my favorite color. Oh dear, maybe the purple has to go. I believe this is the sequence I'm going to go with. And these are all 60 gram skeins, 107 yards each, so that's 856 yards. So enough to do either the love note or the ranunculus. We'll have to make that decision soon. I want this project to be a memory of my trip, so it will be like I've done this color. I start the yoke with this color. I do it on the plane. I do this one the next day by the pool. I work on this one the next day on the Sunday while I go into town. I won't get as much knitting done because I have to drive into town. I'm going to a congregation meeting there. And then the next day we'll move on to this color. So I might not finish each skein each day. I might not even finish the entire project in the entire week. If that's the case, when I get home, I'll have to reassess which colors I've used, how much is left of each color, and decide how to finish it off. I have to take yarn for another project as well, especially for the airplane trip back home, because at that point, the sweater will be too big for me to be knitting in my lap on the airplane. I need something where I can keep my elbows in. So you have to pick another project for that. Let's get these skeins wound up, and then we'll decide which sweater we're doing. Okay, it's been a couple of days. Now I'm ready to wind my choices. I've got my laptop here so I can watch podcasts while I work. And look at the cover that my daughter bought me for the back of the laptop. I love it. And the silicone cover across the keyboard. I love it. This one's giving me a little trouble. There's crisscrossings in here. I'm gonna have to take it off and hand wind it. Which case it will not be a center ball. Oh well. The very last skein. Patience. There's our order. And I need to label them so that when they're all in the bag, I know which one's which. Now I just have to decide which pattern I'm doing and get this first color cast on before we start for our trip and have a couple of rows knit ready. I like the yarn already on the needle so that when we go through security, it's quite clear that they're knitting needles, not weapons. So I'll get those cast on. So I've got some sweaters laid out on the bed trying to decide now which pattern I want to do with these yarns. The yarn is a merino cashmere nylon blend. So should I do the love notes, of which I've done 2 of in the past, the ranunculus, where I have 2 ranunculi, or the Wilfreda, of which I only have 1. Tempted to go for a second Wilfreda, but that cable. The love note, I think, is too much lace work. The risk of dropping stitches while scrunched up in an airplane seat. I think we'll rule that one out. That cable is actually 5 stitches in each cable twist. There's a purl stitch in between. So I can't do that one without a cable needle. So it will not be the one. The ranunculus it is. I'm reporting that I have cast on the neck of my travel sweater. It starts with a tubular cast on, which means a provisional cast on with a scrap waist of yarn first, and then you increase out of it. So I felt it was necessary to finish the neck first and make sure that it's actually going to fit over my head before we carry on with the rest of the sweater. So this is now ready for airplane knitting, and it does fit over my head. Got a lovely stretch to it. Now just need to finish packing, and the countdown is on. Heading for the airport. Here's the weather that we're leaving behind. In Calgary right now it's -1 Celsius, and we had snow 24 hours ago. In the WestJet lounge now. Found a little cubby hole way at the back of the lounge. And here there's a scanner code for the menu where you order your food to come to your table. And I've got flyaway hair from the winter hat. Yum, yum, yum. But I'm ready for my destination. A 1-hour flight from Calgary to Vancouver, a 3-hour layover in Vancouver, and then ready to take the 7-hour flight to Kauai. And on the flight, I had to dip into my second color. We're at the Koala landing resort on Popu Beach on Kauai. We got here pretty late last night and went straight to bed. But now let's check out our digs. This fully stocked kitchen, all the appliances and utensils. Good living room. Balcony areas. Bedroom. Walk-in closet. And an ensuite. With 2 sinks. And then let's go out on the balcony and see our view. Oh, there's yoga down there. Hello.
Hi.
An update on my knitting project. I used all of color 1 on the airplane trip and started in on color 2. So we'll work with color 2 today and see how far we get. Heading into Costco soon. Let's take a tour of the property. This is the lobby. the view from the restaurant where I had macadamia banana nut pancakes and my husband had eggs and smashed potatoes. Beyond the restaurant, there's access to the rocky shoreline. The resort has other pools besides the ones that we could see from our balcony, including the Serenity Pool and, I can't remember what this one's called. And fields for things like soccer and volleyball. On day one of our Kauai vacation, we drove into town for some groceries. Lush vegetation everywhere and traffic everywhere. Section is actually labeled on the map as Tree Tunnel. Costco's in Hawaii are great places to buy fresh fish, and every Hawaii trip we go through 2 4-liter jugs of Pog. And then back at the resort, we walked along the water's edge a bit. The Sheraton down the way has a nice beach, but all beaches in Hawaii are public property, even if they're in front of a resort. This is the main pool area of our resort as we're coming back up from the waterfront. The sun is setting soon, and all the little torches are lit. It's going to be so pretty. I'm not sure how much of the sunset we'll see, though. It's over there. No chairs on the table. That'd be a good sunset viewing. Let's get over here. It's so bright. tried to go to worship at the local Kingdom Hall in Lihue, but they were not there. There was a special assembly somewhere else. Here's proof that I tried.
Hawaiian person to see the Hawaiian Islands, which he named the Sandwich.
On day 2, we went to Waimea Canyon, but this is just a sneak peek along the way. Chickens run wild all over the island. We'll find them in every car park. And by the way, they don't crow at sunrise. They crow all day long.
Earthquake activity often happens around the edges of tectonic plates because the plate is moving. But I said that Hawaii sits in the middle of the Pacific plate. So, what's that got to do with Hawaii? Hawaii's volcanic activity is and has been caused by a place beneath the crust where a massive chamber of magma lies. Whenever it can find a weak spot in the crust, the magma bursts or oozes through, which is of course a volcano. In Hawaii and in a line of places further northwest, this has been going on for millions of years. Kauai is the oldest of the Hawaiian Islands. It was the first place where the magma rose through the crust layer in the ocean and built up enough to create dry land above the surface of the ocean, and of course the Big Island is the newest. It's still being built up today. The islands line up in the direction of the movement of the Pacific Plate. The islands were formed by...
I highly recommend downloading the Guide Along app when you're self-driving on a vacation. We've used it in many locations. We've nicknamed our guide Gary.
We've been talking about the Hawaiian Islands forming by passing over a hotspot. But how long has this taken? By looking at the seamounts through the North Pacific Ocean, it's calculated that the hotspot responsible for building Hawaii today has been active for about 80 million years. Though not every seamount has become big enough to become an island, underwater mountains from this hotspot go as far as the tip of the Aleutian Islands that project from Alaska towards Russia. Yep. There's two of them over there, huh?
I know. I have to change lenses. So.
Waimea Canyon is often called the Grand Canyon of Hawaii. There are many different lookout spots along the way. Now we're heading back down to the coast. We saw many abandoned, stripped down, and rusted out vehicles. At this point, if we turned right, the road would soon end at a beach, but we're tired. We're going to turn left and head back to the resort. Back to the resort. Here's an update on my Color a Day vacation project. I finished color 1 on the plane and started it on second color on the plane. And then the next day with the second color we got to the split for sleeves. And I didn't have any put it on hold cords, what are they called? Anyway, with me, but I had already intended to do the sleeves 2 at a time on a long cable. So I went ahead and put them on the long cable. Carried on the body for the rest of that color for the rest of that day. I do still have some of that color left. That's in there. And then yesterday started the third day. The third day's color I put in the sleeves, working from both ends of the cake, doing the sleeves 2 at a time on the cable. So I pinned together the needles for the body so that they're on hold. Now, I've got this much, the third color, yeah, this much of a third color left, but according to my rules that I made for myself, I gotta start a new color for the 4th day. So we'll get those started on the sleeves. And yeah, I didn't get very far on color 3 because we went for a long drive up to Waimea Canyon. Very twisty, windy road and very fast altitude change, so I didn't get any knitting done in the car. So this was just last evening's knitting. I think today we're driving up to the north coast. I don't know how windy those roads are, but I'll get the 1, 2, 3, 4. I'll get the 4th color set up and ready to go. On Monday, we drove around Poipu and visited Shipwreck Beach. Notice the red flags. That means swimming conditions are not safe. It was like that most of the week. And then back up through the tree tunnel to the highway to make our way east and to the north coast. There is a 16-mile between the end of the route to the north coast and the end of the route past Waimea Canyon that is impassable, so you can't circle the entire island. So we broke it into 2 days of touring.
Oh, yeah.
This is Koala Beach that we're driving alongside. A little further ahead on the right, there's a good opening where we can turn into the car park. On a day when the waves are good, it's a great beach to sit and watch local surfers and boogie boarders. If you're lucky and the weather is calm, over on the north end, near the rock wall, can be a protected and good place to swim, with sand instead of rocks underneath. With all of Kauai beaches, and especially the ones with fairly open exposure to ocean swells like this one, please do be careful and don't get yourself into a situation beyond your abilities. This beach does have a lifeguard, and it's worth having a quick chat with them where the best place to take a swim would be. The sandbar often moves around, and the direction of swell will change conditions all the time. Even if we don't go for a swim, hopefully there's some good surfing to watch. If we turn in, we'll cross the multi-use path to get onto the sand.
Look at those white birds everywhere. I forgot what they're called. A good spot for a picnic in the parking lot. La-di-da, waiting our turn to cross the bridge. Okay. Water duct.
The next street that turns off to the right is Aku Road. This is the way to get to Hanalei Beach. If we want to see the beach and its great views, take a swim,
So busy.
Shortly after this next town, you're not allowed to go any further without a hiking permit, so we turned around in this town. Don't remember the name of this town.
This must be a big touristy spot town.
Yep.
Oops.
Even in the rain, it's beautiful. Ready to start day 5 on Tuesday. We just stayed around the resort on this day. We spent most of the day at the Serenity Pool, which was hidden in a far corner of the resort that very few people found. First thing in the morning on Wednesday, day 6, we headed over to the nearby Kauai coffee farm to take a tour of their 4,000-acre farm. You find the beans after you break open a berry and rub away all the slime. There were a couple of wild hogs in between the rows, but I never caught one on camera. Every year, on a rotational basis, they cut back a portion of their fields because if after 5 years of growth they get too straggly and they need to be cut back, and they need to keep them under a certain height in order for their harvester machines to work to go through them. The farm used to be a sugar plantation, so this is an old sugar mill repurposed into a coffee processing plant. Because this farm is all on flat land, they can harvest by machine. So these are refurbished cherry picking machines. But that means they harvest only once a year, and the machine strips everything off the tree. The good berries are sorted out in the mill, and all the rest of the material is sent to the compost field and later put back around the trees as mulch. Time for an update on my project. Day 6, color number 6. I finished off the cuffs this morning. That nice I-cord cuff. And then we went for a tour of the Kauai coffee farm, which was fun. Now we're back and Dan's got some work to do, so I'm going to join color number 6 to the body and continue on. This is now my most favorite knitting spot. How funny that my knitting is matching my foot cushion so well. Every time we eat at the restaurant, the birds like to come visit us. On Thursday, we hung out at Baby Beach, where there was also a turtle hanging out. And the law in Hawaii is you need to stay at least 10 feet away from a turtle, 15 feet if they might be nesting. I didn't bring my sweater to the beach. I'm working on a smaller project here, a dishcloth. After we'd had too much sun, we went back to the resort, of course. On Thursday night was the anniversary of Jesus' death. The memorial was held in Lihue at a performance arts center. And I'm very grateful for my husband for coming with me, even though he's not one of Jehovah's Witnesses. It was a beautiful event. The guest speaker was actually from headquarters. On Friday morning, we had to check out and kill a whole day before our overnight flight. Sound like it's screaming. In the water, waves see enough blowhole? Good call. I don't know. The wake of the boat slowed down the spouting for a while. Now back into Lihue, past my favorite tree. And then up to see Wailua Falls, just the other side of Lihue. Wailua Falls was showing in the opening scene of Fantasy Island way back then.
To herald the arrival of the new guests who would be changing characters of each episode, Mr. Rourke was played by the suave Ricardo Montalban. In the first episode of the opening season, Mr. Rourke declared that his guests were paying $50,000 for a 3-night stay. With each episode, guests would arrive. Mr. Rourke would hint to us the nature of their fantasy by a short and usually cryptic explanation to tattoo, often with some concern about what they wished for. The fantasies ranged from finding true love to avenging a murder, or even something supernatural. There was almost always a twist. The guest would learn a moral lesson through some unexpected consequence in how their fantasy played out. Mr. Rourke would declare to the guest that once their fantasy had begun, he was powerless to stop it, and they must see it through to the end. Sometimes he would have to intervene when real danger was imminent. There were a lot of questions about whether Mr. Rourke was a human or more so some type of immortal. In one episode, there was a nudge and a wink.
Back in Lihue, we hung out at the Marriott Beach for a little while. Oh, you come and stole from the baby? Oh, you meanie. We had a late afternoon lunch at Costco and a mint raspberry sundae. Then we sat at a park until the sun went down, where I knitted and Dan read. Watching some soccer practice. Found a phone booth. 50 cents for a local call, according to the label, but there was no dial tone. At the airport, I finished off the last of my day 8 color. This is sunrise from the plane as we arrived in Vancouver. And this is approaching Calgary later on in the day. My house is down there. And we're back to the snow. Hi friends, time for an update on my vacation project. I used up all of color 8, the last color on the last day of our vacation, just before we got, about an hour before we got on the plane. I finished off with this color. So now all that's left, because I think the length is perfect. I think the length is just perfect. All that's left is to do a bind off. The waist will be an I-cord bind off, just like the sleeves. So now I'm trying to decide which of my leftover colors to do the bind off in. Actually, I have one more skein left of a color that matches color 1, so I'm going to bind off with that. Here's the end result after it's washed and blocked. The sleeves maybe went about an inch too long, but it's still fine. Nice and cozy. That cashmere, a little tiny bit of 10% cashmere in the yarn. It's so nice and soft and cozy. I love it. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.